Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm definitely happy to be back with you live from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where we are having a look at our markets. Starting off with Asia, having a bit of a mixed ending to the day. We did have the private sector survey showing that manufacturing activity, rather factory activity in China, improving for the month of May at 48.1%, a little bit higher than it was in April's reading. That reading coming in at 46. Nonetheless, we are seeing the Hang Seng Index up about 0.5%. The Nikkei in Japan also in positive territory, up 0.6%. We're kind of seeing that same mixed theme filtering through to the European markets. They're having a bit of a mixed start as well as they kick off the month of June. And this is on the back of inflation concerns in the Eurozone area. That inflation number coming in 8.1% higher than expected. And the concern is that once the EU bans on Russian oil really fully kick in, what will the price pressures mean for the oil market as well towards the end of the year, but also what will it do for inflation? But nonetheless, as we look at our local markets, a bit thin when it comes to stock exchange news service or company related news. But to talk to us about a whole host of issues that are unfolding in the markets, we are joined by Patrice Rousseau, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Ashburton Investments. Patrice, thank you so much for your time. Let's have a check-in on the, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, our all-share index. How are we looking so far as we kick off a new trading month?
Good afternoon, Nastasia, and to your viewers. Yes, a pretty poor start to the new month after a strong week last week where the JSE was up close to 5%, outperforming global markets, which were up about 2.5%. So the pullback really led down by resource stocks, a bit of concerns about the fact that inflation seems to be the real watchword for central banks globally and the type of impact this is going to have on global economies. So resources stocks leading the JSE down 1.7 odd percent, overall down 1%. Really sort of not boding well for the month of June after a fairly flat month of May.
From your experience, I mean, how would you characterize the month of May? Like, is May generally a volatile period, or is this one slightly different?
This is an interesting question because the saying goes, sell in May and go away. So May and June tend to be pretty poor months in the market. Usually you start the year with a bit of an up trend, and then investors tend to be a lot more cautious in the middle of the year. That carries on till about October, and then there's usually a bit of gearing up towards at the end of the year, towards a Santa Claus rally, as they call it. So yeah, these tends to be quite difficult and weak months for stock markets in general across the world.
Is there a source of optimism out there for the markets that you're seeing at all?
Look, for us as an emerging market, I think the one big indicator that everyone's looking at, the largest emerging market being China, I think the fact that the Chinese are talking about reopening after a very severe COVID lockdown is room for optimism. And for us as commodity exporters, if China reopens and starts to consume more of our commodities, I think that's going to be very positive for the terms of trade, very good for the rand, very good for our balance of trade. So a strong China would usually mean a strong South African export environment, which we're looking forward to.
So you have Facebook parent company Meta platform saying that from 9th of June, you'll be able to find their ticker under the name Meta, which will be all caps, META. And that got me thinking, let's unpack, Meta and I guess look at it against the other social US media stocks. How does Meta then fare?
Yeah, very good question. It's interesting you mentioned the stock code Meta. Initially, they went for Metaverse or MVRS because the name Meta was taken, and then they managed to convince whoever owned it was an ETF, I think, who owned that code to let them use it. Meta has performed poorly this year, down 42% on the back of very poor results at the beginning of the year. It's 42% compares to the Nasdaq down 23%. So they've really underperformed the Nasdaq. And you asked about their peer group. Amazon's down 28%, Google is down 21%. The one bright light, if you want to call it that, is Twitter, obviously subject to a bid by Elon Musk. That stock is down only 8%, still down. But the quarter one results, which were released in May, were slightly better than expectations for Meta, despite the fact that sales are slowing. They're incurring quite a lot of cost to launch into the metaverse. I would say the share price is an even keel. So after being down over 40%. Launch into the metaverse.
Well, before I let you go, I mean, we've got about a few seconds left in terms of, the rest of the interview. But any key news that you're keeping an eye on?
I think right now, this month, the key news will be any news from the Federal Reserve in terms of what they're going to do in terms of interest rate and how they're going to combat inflation. Obviously, any news that inflation will have to be fought with increases from the Federal Reserve of 50 basis points or 0.5% will be seen quite negatively by the market. On the other hand, if there's a indication that it will pause, that it will be seen as more positive.
All right, Patrice, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is Patrice Rousseau, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Ashburton Investments, giving us his perspective in terms of the latest market news that are unfolding as we speak. Nonetheless, that is it from me. We'll be back tomorrow with more market news coverage. So let's take a